You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Liam.
I'm still Savage.
And I am Scarr.
And now a bunch of crotchety old men are going to give out about the young'uns.
That's might happen. I don't know. I don't know if I feel like doing that.
More specifically, we're going to talk about game mechanics and, you know, there's been a certain amount of streamlining. Specifically, I guess the full blurb for this would be whether modern gamers are lazy because they have, or, you know, they have mechanics which are much easier, and it's often seen now that more advanced mechanics are an impediment to a game rather than an aid to the game. And, you know, is there any imperative? Is there any moral imperative for people to put a bit of graft in to their leisure time, or is this some kind of strange antiquated notion? So, kind of lazy players versus lazy GM, lazy gaming. That's what we're talking about.
Lazy gaming, like lazy days.
Like I mean, there is a certain perception among some people, and maybe that's not fair, that anything more than add a second D20 and either take the highest or the lowest is too much. And adding one dice and one number is about to the extent that mechanics can do these days without being too complicated.
Right, but hold on. Why am I assuming that because the system's complicated, I have to do a lot of work? I'm lazy. There's lots of ways to get around this. We are also gaming in the time of pandemic, which means I am invariably gaming on a computer, a computational device, if you will, that will allow me to crunch numbers all day long, and all I need to worry about are the results. So I'm elevated from a simple computational function of the game to someone who makes decisions and doesn't really have to worry about what the numbers say, as long as I'm getting inputs and outputs and playing as my character sees fit and being true to myself.
You've got an aid that means your laziness is enabled.
Exactly. And
how do you know? So okay, fair enough. So I'm currently running a Warframe campaign, okay, and Warframe can get a little bit complicated. You know, okay, I'm going to make my attack, right? I have a point of advantage from last round, okay. Me and my buddies here outnumber you. We outnumber your guys 2-1. So I'm going to have a plus 20. All right. I have a fatigue condition, so I'm going to have a minus 10. Okay. All right, and I have these traits that mean that if I succeed, I get plus 2 SL onto my check. Now, did you remember what I just said?
You're tired, you're hungry, but wait, you're exhausted, but there's more of you than
I have
them.
a plus 20, and if my roll succeeds, I have plus 2 SL.
Okay.
Basically is what I just said. But I broke it up into several different bits.
I was thinking about...
Now, that can be too much for players to keep track of. And yes, automation does make that a lot easier. Yeah. But you do also need to make sure the computer's honest. And I've found, certainly with Foundry, it does get most of those things correct. Sometimes, maybe not 100%, so there might be some things like, there might be too much weight on the card sheet or something like that, so somebody might be encumbered when maybe they're not supposed to be, because they have the world on their back rather than just the combat gear that they need.
So the price of laziness, like most vices, is that you encounter and encourage waste. In your example, a lazy player doesn't check to make sure the Foundry is getting it right, is accepting the cost or the waste of perhaps they're dropping a bonus or they're not getting as good an outcome as they might have otherwise.
This is probably an extreme example, okay? But you will find it even if you're running something like Fifth Ed, that you will have players who will have the same card sheet and they might not have updated it the last time they leveled. And if you check, well, when they leveled, they got a competence bonus. Their competence bonuses went from plus 2 to plus 3. So now, rather than rolling strength plus 2, they should be rolling strength plus 3, and suddenly all their hits are too low. Okay. Because they haven't updated the thing.
I've been that player.
Yeah.
I've been that player, and I've fought through several combats where I was under level in some aspect. And yeah, you encourage or you incur a cost of waste. I'm missing modifiers that would have made the fight easier for me. By being lazy, I've made it harder for myself. But the character was built on good foundations and was able to still pull its weight and survive in those circumstances. And, of course, once the error was discovered, I was encouraged to catch up on the work and not be so goddamn lazy. What's the actual cost here?
Well, I guess, I don't know. This seemed like a good topic that we could have a bit of a rant and we could analyse,
So the cost,
streamlined systems versus more complicated systems.
Well, one of the costs is I'm dragging the rest of the party down. I'm endangering their characters by not being on top of my own game. I've been a lazy player, and I should have been paying more attention to my leveling. I should probably know the combat system a bit better, so that I could recognise that I'm below par. But that would require me to do some work and some research and some reading and some paying attention. There's definitely an argument for when players can be lazy to their own detriment and to the detriment of those around them. But I do like the kind of laziness that I get to indulge in because I have been given systems that will take away some of the mundane tasks in role-playing that I don't need to... Either I don't need to pay attention to them in the same purely numbers way, or I get to engage with them in a different way that makes it more about making meaningful decisions that are then reflected.
Hold on now, Mick. You have advocated to me in the past, so I'm going to hold you up for this hypocrisy of that you want every single ration, every single arrow, every single caltrop accounted for.
Yeah, and it's really easy. But it's really easy to do when I don't have to keep... I don't keep track of any of that, but I can go to my ammo sheet and go, oh, I'm out. Because every time I've been firing my bow and arrow, the computer's going, well, that's another arrow gone.
So there are certain systems now which and if you look at, say, some of the 40k stuff, they do it as well, that the only time... Now, this can often be that it's narratively focused. The only time that ammo is an issue is when certain dice are rolled. That you roll, if you roll a fumble or something like that, or a botch, that's when you run out of ammo.
Yeah.
And rather than you keeping track of ammo for your blaster or your bolter, that's what Space Marines have, that you just don't bother with it. And I know that to an extent as well, some of the newer stuff like the Freya Liga stuff, which would be a lot more narratively driven, from looking at the new Twilight 2000 stuff, they're going a similar vein as well. That ammo is really, is based on the dice results.
I suppose
I'll
clarify what is potentially a contradictory position. If it matters in the system that ammo is tracked, then I'm interested in tracking ammo. But if there's a system that allows me to track the ammo automatically, I'm interested in that too. If it doesn't matter in the system that ammo is tracked, like if I'm playing a John Woo action game, it doesn't matter how many times I've shot it only matters that I reload when I'm ducked behind a desk and there's dialogue going on. It doesn't matter if I fire the gun 14 times or 16 times while somersaulting across that desk. It's always dependent on the kind of game you're playing. But in either case, I'd much prefer that there was a system that allows me to be lazy and track some of the stuff that might be taking up headspace, to allow me to concentrate on coming up with something witty to say while reloading. Or being able to pay more attention to the battlefield while firing my arrows instead of wondering, is my character sheet up to date? There, I think I've dug myself out of the hypocrisy hole one more time. So
it's okay. It depends. Is your answer?
No, the objective to be lazy is a through line in all of that. I do like when, what is laziness here in this context? Is it a lack of system?
Lazy is again. I'm being a little facetious here because I don't think I'm actually arguing that my players are lazy or that somebody who doesn't want to roll a d20 add a single number to it is lazy. I guess it's just the general trend in the industry is that systems are more streamlined and easy, and the whole concept of rolling on a table or rolling on subtable B is out the window.
There's a very pejorative sort of bent to all of this. It is kind of, I can't remember if it was Plato or Pliny the Elder who's the first recorded instance of giving out about the youth of today. But you go that far back to find the first one. And we're angry old men. We could fall into this trap if we wanted to. But I would contend that what could be perceived, not Julie, you're a lovely guy, what could be perceived as laziness in the new players, and we have some research data that indicates that 40 plus is very much a fringe part of role-playing now. There's a massive swell of people in their 20s. And if you look at those people and say, oh, they're just lazy, they don't learn the game, they don't really learn the games the way we used to learn them, they don't really pay attention to their taco, oh god, they don't really pay attention to system mastery the way I used to. But they're probably online, they're probably having to make sure that their comms are up, that their Roll20 environment is working, or Foundry, whatever they're using is working, that they have their D&D Beyond account linked into the game, and that they've kept that up to date. And they're also probably hunting for good art to represent the character, or they might be creating 3D models of their characters to represent them in the game world. They may be getting into character by getting some eyeshadow and some cloaks and things together, sticking on some false tusks. I see a lot of cosplay entering the role-playing space now that it's 20-somethings. That's all effort. And that's all effort.
It's I'll do me, and the GM needs to look after the rules and the game world itself.
No, to say that it's all self-interested effort would be, I think, to ignore the fact that it contributes to the game. In a world where you can't bring snacks to the table...
I'm not saying that for sure. I'm just saying like that whereas traditionally we would look at it and go, well, who's putting in 90% of the effort into the game? It's the GM, because the GM's buying the stuff, or people are pitching in for it or whatever. They're reading the material, they're prepping the material, and then they're running the game itself. And while people generally are keeping track of their inventory and maybe animal companions or whatever they have, the GM's keeping track of all of it. Whereas you're pointing at all of this additional stuff that players will be doing to up their game in a kind of something that we wouldn't traditionally consider. So you're saying like they're not lazy, they just have a lot more going on.
I think their effort is in other spheres. I do expect players to know the rules for their characters and their classes or whatever. I often think of players are a subsystem in the system of the game. And it is my job to make sure that the framing system of the game, GM stuff, is done as GM. As a player, it's my job to understand exactly how my class works or how my specialization works, so that when the time comes and the GM sort of stares me blankly and goes, "You're doing what now?" I can explain why I can do what I propose to do and how it works concisely, and only the bits that they need to know. I'm not only am I a lazy player, I'm also a very, very lazy GM. So I would contend that it is the player's job to understand the subsystems they want to take advantage of to win.
I think they do. I would agree that they need to know that inside out. I think as a GM, it behooves you to also know it, because I have known certain players to have very selective readings of rules subsystems.
Yeah,
and certain interpretations thereof.
They're putting in the effort, though. They're putting in the effort of pushing their broken interpretation in. That's some sort of effort, at least.
Well, some of it, no. I think there's two very. There's a scoundrel there who's deliberately trying to push an exploit. They're not lazy. They have done the work either by reading the system or by going online and reading, hey guys, what's the best way to break this system?
Yeah, now they're a grifter.
I don't think they're lazy. There's the other guy who's read the spell description once and then half remembers it and then says, this is how the spell works.
Yeah. The great thing is, at the moment, I can click on the same spell and go, you want to read all the way to the end there, friend?
Yeah.
So, like, as I said before, I'm quite lazy GM. And I've encountered my Bible, and I've mentioned this in the show before, The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master by Sly Flourish, which is a pen name. Person has a real name, can't remember. Is a fantastic book for the GM who, maybe you're just lazy, maybe you just don't have time, maybe you're kind of stuck. But I think any GM who wants to run quite a wide range of games would do well to read the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, because it has such a bunch of good heuristics and shortcuts and kind of workbooks to use to just get you to getting your game running well quickly, because it cuts away a lot of the things that you might be tempted to spend time on because you think you should, and it gets it right down to what actually needs to be paid attention to. I always liked Terry Pratchett's definition of a lazy man. A lazy man is someone who exercises every day because they couldn't be bothered carrying all the extra weight.
I do think there's a sort of an element of labor selection, if you will, in casual play, as we might call it, if we were being a little more modern. The idea of like it's a weird game where you're doing a lot of well, LARPs aren't that weird, but it's less about huh?
Some LARPs are
real weird. Yeah. A lot of people dressed up and talking weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
And signing insurance disclaimers for when they're jumping off staircases. But it's mainly in most games. It's a matter of mental labor, which is learning your rules, doing your strategic and tactics, but also emotional labor. And this is sort of a new fancy millennial thought of, being
in touch with your emotions and talking about things rather than drinking yourself to death.
I can do both.
But yeah, in this case, it's more the process of getting invested in the game, falling in love with your character, caring about what the other players are doing, caring about the GM setting. That's all to a certain extent, a certain level of emotional labor. And there's that aspect, those sort of labors you have to do, but also like how much are you getting out of doing labor? Like the theory of, stop being lazy, get invested in the game is that by putting that effort into the game, you will get enjoyment out. This is the, track all your iron rations and 10-foot poles, because at the end of the really hard dungeon, you'll get this big boost for having done something really, really hard. But not everyone gets that same reward as very specifically Gary Gygax and his pack of weirdos would have gotten from going through the Doom of Horrors or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I enjoyed the graft, I enjoyed the grind, I enjoyed the misery, but at the same time I went back and played old school Essentials and I hated it.
What was different?
Roll D6 to kick in the door. Why? I just kick in the door.
Yeah.
Roll 2D. Roll a D6, and on a 2 you find a secret panel on the wall. I just look at the wall and I examine the wall and I try and find if there's any defects in it. Now, admittedly, it's pretty much the same as rolling a perception check, but like at every door closing behind it, there was a lot of strange, very old ideas that I thought were just nonsense. Like I just did not like them.
It required more work on your part that you didn't feel was actually contributing to fun. Is that
your lantern will only last 6 turns? Somebody has to track the number of lanterns they have. Oh, for God's sake!
See, in the right context, I love Dungeon Light as a mechanic, and having to I've played a lot of Darkest Dungeon, and I've also played again. Roll20 really suits this because it takes that away. You don't have to think about that until the light goes out. And you're like, do we have another torch? Oh, crap.
I agree, and lighting I think is good, and certainly that's one thing that the VTTs have really brought out is how important lighting can be. And if you have your lighting set correctly, you can have all these enemies from outside your visible sphere shooting in at you and attacking you, and you can't do anything about it. Me as a GM, if you have a torch, so long as you have a hand and you're not taking the absolute mick with it, if you're going in with, okay, we're going into the dungeon, I got 2 or 3 points of oil. To me, that's enough for me, and you have a hand, and you're taking an action to put it down, and it's staying fixed while you move away, that to me is enough. Like, the keeping track of a lantern on a turn-by-turn basis...
It's boring. It's rubbish.
Good night. That's gone, and that's gone for a good reason. Like, that, I don't know, that's... To some people, that's laziness, but it's not. To me, it's unnecessary pedantry.
If you can put something in front of the players that, every time we complete a dungeon turn, I'm going to take one of these little fire kind of symbols off the table, because that's the amount of light you've got left. So you're going to have to sort of economize. It depends on how you make.
I guess the game I played, we hadn't got a huge amount of torches, so the game kind of turned into torch management rather than dungeoneering.
Yeah, but you were there to put in the labor of let's solve this dungeon, but you weren't there to do the labor of let's
Lighting management,
figure out the resources needed for the dungeon. And while the people who wrote that game clearly thought that was part of the juice, you disagreed, and you would have preferred a more streamlined mechanic, which just said, like, you know, you have -1 dungeon crap in your backpack, and you just have to balance that.
I mean, look, I when it comes to handling minutia, I can be kind of lazy myself. I know when I was playing a high level ranger in Pathfinder, every now and again when we're in a town, I just turned to the GM and said, I'm going to give you X amount of gold. We have a portable hole. I want a barrel full of arrows in there, and I never want to keep track of an arrow.
Yeah, you put in the effort in the world.
I'll keep track of the adamantines.
You've got enough arrows.
Cold, anything that's worth a GP, I'll keep track of it. But otherwise, I'm not going to bother keeping track of arrows.
It just occurs to me, like, no one forces us to hobby. So invariably, we tend to focus our efforts on the things that we find enjoyable, and let slide the other stuff, because, I mean, why would I do part of a hobby I don't enjoy? So that kind of opens us up to being accused of being lazy in different ways, but really, it's just a function of, I want to do the hobby for the things I like doing it for. I mean, I particularly like making terrain, and I don't particularly like writing stat blocks for monsters. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on the terrain, and I'm going to reskin the monsters with very little work done to make sure it actually makes any sense. So there's some, and then I'm lazy about monster stats. Okay, I am lazy about.
Whereas I'd be lazy about terrain.
Exactly. It's but we both get what we want out of it, you know.
I mean, is some of this down to expectations? Like, how many of these new players are getting in because they've seen the likes of Critical Role and all these systems where, like, if you looked at that, if you were some kind of alien and you were receiving this as a broadcast and tried to put together the rule system that is based on this, that this show is based on, you would have no idea, because they occasionally roll a dice and stuff happens, and like, numbers are like what's added to what doesn't really add up. Like, you could not for the life of you figure out how a system worked by watching a lot of these streams, because they never go into it. They really focus on the story and the actors and how they're reacting and stuff as well. Now that's because they're professional actors. But is that giving a kind of an idea to new players of how these games go, that really the rules they're not really that important, actually. Really what's important is the role playing and your character reactions and stuff.
If you want to use Critical Role, if you want to use that as a framing device for how people learn to play games, then you should probably accept that you're basically saying, well, we're pretty sure that most people learn to have sex by watching porn. And that's a problem, because watching porn doesn't teach you an awful lot about having sex, as it turns out. But I don't think that's how people are learning how to have sex. They're generally learning it by trying it out, not being very good at it, and deciding to get better if they enjoy it, or focusing on the areas of it that they enjoy. And that's going to have nothing to do with... you'll quickly realize watching more porn isn't going to teach you anything.
Well, that may well be the case. That I understand what you're saying there, but certainly I regularly read in the newspaper, and some of it could well be, won't somebody please think of the children? But there regularly are warnings that, the kids are getting very bad ideas about what sex is based on looking at porn. So are people getting bad ideas of Critical Role-playing based on watching stuff like Critical Role?
I think that's a yes until you try it. And unless there's something deeply wrong with you, you're not going to be able to force the other participants into having sex that way or playing games that way.
But similarly, will they end up not having a good time because of the bad experience and bad expectations you have?
It suggests that there's only one way into the hobby, and that is through watching YouTube. I don't think that's really right. And look, Let's Play or performative play is only one type of introduction that's been put out. Like, I can't name that many Let's Play or performative play channels, but I can name a couple of dozen that do kind of what we do here, which is advice, theory, and sort of good game education on how to play and how to play well. And it stems from, and it ranges from dungeon mastery to costuming and roleplay and kind of the emotional work that has to be done and being a good GM and being a conscientious player and everything in between. Statting monsters correctly, for example. So it's not as if Critical Role hold the monopoly of people's attention in terms of how games are played or what playing a game looks like. There's plenty of other resources out there. And these aren't tiny channels either. These are, I've got 1 million subscribers to wave around kind of things. I'm going to start a Kickstarter to do a book on GMing kind of things. There's a wealth of information out there for anyone who, if all you want to do is watch Critical Role, then you're really you're watching TV, you're watching whatever. It's like people who watch sport. They can put the jersey on, but they're not going to line out for a game. The ones who want to actually get any better at it or actually engage in the hobby aren't just going to be content watching TV. They're going to want to kit out. They're going to want to find like-minded people. They're going to want to play a game.
But Mick, I just want to have fun on a whatever Friday night or Thursday night or whatever we do. I don't want to have to do any homework. I just want to play the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine. Sometimes all we need are bodies. There's a guy two screens over who will probably question every decision you make and go, "Are you sure that's your bonus?" They're useful.
That's pushing them into the role of the armchair quarterback, and for certain games, like if you're looking at it, the much maligned fourth ed, you did have your controller character who could be pushing and pulling and give people bonuses and stuff like, it
probably played by someone who was interested in learning how to do that.
Yep.
The guy who just wanted to hit stuff, he was a fighter. He just wanted to hit stuff. That was fine.
Yeah.
So I love that line in the topic note. Is there a moral imperative to put some effort into your hobby? I kind of think there is.
There's no moral imperative for a person to put effort into their enjoyment. There might be a moral imperative for a person who is part of a group to put effort into the group's enjoyment. That I think
one kind of requires the other at some level. You've got to make some effort on your own bat to facilitate making an effort for the group.
Look, when you're having a barbecue, some people are going to turn up with pack of burgers, sausages, and maybe a crate of beer, and some people will rock in with nothing or one jar of salsa and just eat everything for everybody.
Well, like barbecues, like orgies, if they ain't givers, they ain't getting ass back.
Sometimes but you'd like orgies, you need the numbers.
Who wants to eat? I know I've dragged us into a place of moral turpitude yet again. It's a good question. I think it's still a good question. If we frame this at the top in terms of are the new players lazy? Have they not put in the graft? I think the answer is kind of actually no. They're having to pay attention, like a lot of things. The younger generation have to pay attention to a whole bunch of stuff we never even considered. And if you decide to discount that effort as laziness, that's kind of on you. Do we have a duty to make an effort? Perhaps. Probably not, but perhaps not to ourselves, but certainly to the people we play with at some level. There has to be some sort of effort made.
Well, I mean, I think that the play over the last year and a half, 2 years, during the pandemic has kind of thrown things down a completely different side road. Because if you look at it, before the pandemic, online play wasn't that big. I'd say, I've no idea. I couldn't throw percentages on it, but I mean, would it be fair to say 10% of games were online? Maybe. I have no idea on the statistics of that. I've never seen it, and if there are statistics, lies damn lies and statistics,
Yeah. Fermi kind of estimate, let's say 10%.
Very few. Okay, I'll just say it this way from my point of view. Very few of my friends had a consistent online game. They did it occasionally when people were, they moved to Sweden or moved to the States or whatever, and they did it for a while. They did it, but as soon as they had the option of in-person play, they switched right back to in-person play. So I don't know if it's fair to say that they had to keep track of all these online tools in general, because if you moved back 2 years ago, people would have been playing in person, and they wouldn't have had to keep track of all that.
people were slowly learning. I think people were using tools, just not like GMs would have their laptop with you. People would still have their character sheets on their phones, so they were using some tools.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the omnipresent thing that it was now. It is now.
Certainly, there was a hostility. I know certainly. Running Pathfinder games, there was a bit of hostility to people having electronic versions of their sheets because, well, I think that's also the nature of the society play because, there were rules about what you could and couldn't do with your character and had to keep track of certain things. I don't want you to hand me your expensive iPad for me to take a look at your character sheet because if I drop the thing, you got to be a bit miffed.
Yeah, that's the tools not living up to the functionality needed. There's no need for me to hand my pad to you. I'll just swipe to share my character sheet with your GM app. That one's done and dusted, or at least it should be.
That thing doesn't exist.
But that's not good. That's not good enough. And I'd say anyone worth their salt who wants to release an RPG post-pandemic, they better have a database engineer
and export
on
the PDF at least, and then you can mail it.
Hell no!
Given that a lot of gaming spaces are in basements, certainly I know with Pathfinder for quite a while we were running in the basement of the centre on what's the name of that street? Lombard Street.
Oh yeah,
not Lombard Street. The extension of Lombard Street. It's Pierce Street. Anyway, I don't remember. So the internet connection there was nigh on non-existent.
Peer to peer. I got a new phone recently and I was able to just put them down beside each other. They didn't connect to anything except each other and transferred everything.
Large degree of trust there.
Yes, you're in a gaming group.
Yes, but like it's not just I'm not just talking about like that I trust you to not have something that will be able to then like exploit my phone. I trust that you are competent enough to not have crap on your phone. Because you got ripped off by somebody, or somebody planted some bad software on your computer.
Well, that's kind of for me and my phones to discover as we go along. But we are talking about packets of information sent between devices in a low connectivity environment. Solve problem, right? I mean, what do you want here? IR?
Any inter-device connection carries with it a lot of power and a lot of trust.
Yes. Okay, assuming those thresholds have been met, why wouldn't you do it for digital gameplay? If you're going to sit down in real space and you want to use digital tools because, let's drag it back to the topic of the episode, you're feeling lazy, or lazy, inverted commas, then the tools should support the play. My
expectation is that you have a printed sheet, print your thing out before you come to the game.
But not
everyone has printers.
But
save it as a PDF and email it before the game.
When my character suffers a grievous loss of intelligence, much like the player, and I have to get my sheet out. Hold on, guys. Okay, so I've lost 4 points of intelligence. That's -2 to my bonus. Okay, now then that's going to have that affects the spells I can cast. So those spell slots.
Here's a pencil.
Thanks for the pencil. Can you just wait a second while I do this? This is going to take a while. Because it cascades into every other part of my character sheet, and it's on paper. Sorry, guys. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Sometimes lazy is best because I much prefer click, everything cascades, and I get back to the game, which is why I came here in the first place.
Yeah. Like I guess there's tools like that. I guess there's also modern mechanics, which I. It's not that I disagree with old people saying that modern mechanics are streamlined. It's that I dislike them blaming the users of those rules for using them, when clearly it was someone game designed those rules and then those rules got popular. The designer was making a new rule need, and that new rule need took off. It appealed to people. That's development. Like some really cool technologies get left behind. Paddle boats, steamboats were really cool in their day. We fly around in airplanes and drive around in cars now.
Have you ever driven a hire car in Ireland?
Yeah.
No.
How's this going?
Okay. Have you ever felt and heard the shocking state that most of the gearboxes and clutches are in?
What's this? I'm sorry, buddy, but where does this
Do you know why that is? Because in the States, you will not be able to hire a manual transmission car. Okay. Most people do not know how to drive a manual transmission car. They're nearly all automatic. And when they come over here and hire a car, it's damn near impossible to get an automatic car. So when they come over, they're not used to driving stick, and they wreck the gearboxes.
Okay. Because they're lazy?
Why did the automatic gearbox not kick off here?
Couldn't tell.
We never saw the use of it. The road conditions weren't quite as good. And when automatic gearboxes were first out, they were less fuel efficient and they were less adaptable. If you look at a modern automatic gearbox, it's just as efficient as driving manual, and it will deal with most of the conditions as well, or better than most drivers can drive. And yet automatic gearboxes still aren't a thing here. It's just it sometimes there can be stuff that are clearly better, but they just don't come in.
But that you're describing inertia.
It can be a little bit. It can be inertia, yeah, and it can be that look like, damn it, I've always driven a manual. I've no interest in driving an automatic car. It's like a bumper car.
So we're looking at a kind of a laziness in thinking there, an unwillingness.
It can be, yeah.
Why don't we do things differently? Well, it's the way we've always done them, and it's good enough for us. And we don't want any of your new ideas and new ways of doing.
Some people are still happy playing AD&D.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
I've always played AD&D,
and I like playing AD&D. I like it even better when it's some of the stuff that I don't really need to think about is taken care of, so that I can concentrate on the things I do want to think about. Where
you have an older generation crotchetedly giving out about these new people and then not knowing stuff and not keeping track of stuff and not learning stuff. Yeah. Is there not also that same thing on the other foot?
Absolutely.
Of your older players going, I don't like new stuff and I don't want to learn new stuff. I know this existing stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's
a nice way to, actually a really nice way to kind of bring the whole thing full circle. So never mind the young'uns. What have you done lately?
Everybody's lazy.
Everybody's lazy. Man, we went all over the place. Sex education.
We did.
Manual versus automatic gearboxes. The difficulty, trust issues on kind of peer-to-peer networks. Holy, we certainly put in the effort on this episode. So, but we should probably draw.
We have to at least sound like we're somewhat intelligent, I like. And not just giving it about the young'uns.
Yeah, we had references to Plato and or Pliny the Elder. Can't remember which one. Not exactly a classic deal.
Is it Pliny or Pliny?
Pliny the Elder. What did I say? Penny?
Pliny
the Elder. Okay, folks. So, are we lazy? Are we lazy in our thinking? Are we lazy conceptually? Or is sometimes laziness the smartest way to be a fit man?
Are we lazy in editing these episodes and giving you terrible sound quality?
We're going to find that one out much further down the road. I'll be putting in the least effort possible to produce a viable product. That's what we call these now? Viable podcast products.
MVPs.
In the age of COVID. Anyway, you can find us. You can come and find us making an effort on Discord. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. That's kind of really... I'd like to say we covered everything, but we don't really. That's kind of where we focus our attentions. Maybe not even Facebook, because that's still a thing. Write to us at Party at the Adventure Party.
Automatically drops to Facebook.
Yep. partyattheadventureparty.net. Yes.
Yep.
Net.
And tune into us on Spotify, iTunes. You find us at adventureparty.net, where we put stuff out. Check YouTube if you want to see the bespoke title cards and boost our YouTube numbers. But for now, having demonstrated some genuine effort, this party's over. You've been listening to The Adventure Party. We're a ragtag collective of desperate souls, striving for truth in a world of tabletop gone mad. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at party@theadventuringparty.net. Although, between you and me, the best place to track us down is Discord. Check the show notes for a link. This podcast released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, which is like free, but with extra steps. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week. Man, Liam, I was getting lost there. I had no idea where we were going. I was like, am I for this? Am I against this?
It was a long analogy.
I drive stick.
Oh, well, do you know the real reason why automatic gearboxes never really took off here? We're cheap.
Are they more expensive?
Oh, yeah, you try and buy an automatic gearbox, it'll probably cost you $2-3 grand more.
Right. I think I'll just learn to drive, thanks.
Well, but actually it's the opposite in the States because of the volume. Volume-wise, yes, they are more expensive, but then you have to do a custom order for a manual gearbox in the States.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to pay more
petrol head kind of
comparatively.
Thing. Like all the muscle cars must be stick, right?
I don't know. I think some of them are. A lot of sports cars would be, but even still, it's gotten to the stage where, actually, electric cars just don't have gearboxes at all.
Yeah.
But a lot of the newer sports cars either don't have set gears, or they have an automatic gearbox which changes faster than people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I suppose that means you get to pay attention to something else, like not hitting everything else.